African American Alumni Council's Real Talk series. I am Teresa Hopkins Staten, a co-chair of the African American Alumni Council. You will hear from Glenn Cassis, the other co-chair, momentarily. Just to give you some background information about the council, over the past several years, this council has been a consistent means for Black alumni to remain connected and engaged with the university. The mission of the council, in part, is to attract and engage alumni, support African American students as they matriculate through UConn, positioning them to be successful students and professionals, and to host events such as this one. Some of the council's activities include establishing an endowed scholarship that has been awarded annually since 2009, and we are very proud of that. Working with admissions to encourage prospective students and their families to attend UConn, supporting Dr. Walina Price and the H. Fred Simons Cultural Center, supporting the Scholars House learning community, acknowledging esteemed alumni, and you will hear from one this evening, who are blazing new trails of reform and change in STEM and other critical areas, like Crystal Renee Emery, who received an honorary Doctorate of Letters degree from UConn in 2018. So these are the types of events that we like to host, just engaging our alumni and just the entire UConn community. And again, this evening, I hit the ball out of the park, and I know that you're going to enjoy our guests tonight. So with that, thank you for spending time with us, and I'll turn it over to Glenn Cassis. Glenn?
Thank you very much, Teresa. My name is Glenn Cassis. As Teresa mentioned, I am the co-chair of the African American Alumni Council, and it's an honor for me to be with you today because we have a very important guest who will be speaking to us, Ron Ancrum. Ron believes that every challenge hides an opportunity. An expert in nonprofit management and organizational development, his professional career includes college admissions officer, professor, consultant, nonprofit executive, philanthropist, and musician. Ron is a graduate of University of Connecticut School of Fine Arts and Music in 1972, and MSBA from UMass McCormick Institute and IEL Education Policy Institute certificate. During his 7 years at UConn, Ron was well known on campus as a musician. He conducted a symphony orchestra, played in the marching band, performed with his jazz band, was a member of the Black Voices of Freedom, and wrote or arranged music for numerous ensembles. Ron also served on the Student Union Board of Governors, was a member of Tau Epsilon Phi, and worked in student affairs from 1972 to 1974. He has provided consulting services for more than 50 organizations and has built networking relationships across many levels, from college presidents to community organizers. Years of board service give him a unique perspective on the critical volunteer sector. In addition, he's been appointed to committees and is a founding member of several organizations. He is a former trustee for the Boston Conservatory Mass Advocates for Children, founding member and steering committee for Leadership Pioneer Valley in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, and former associate professor of macro practice at Boston College of Social Work. Born in Stamford, Connecticut, Ron lived and worked in Boston, Massachusetts for much of his professional career. He now resides in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for full disclosure, Ron and I go back a long way. We were friends during the days at UConn back in the 70s. In fact, he was a member of my wedding party some 47 years ago. So with that, Ron, I'd like to call you in and take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm so honored to be invited by the university. You never know if you're invited to come back to campus once you leave there. So this is quite an honor for me. It's been a long time since I've been there. but I can tell you I follow both the women and men's basketball teams on a regular basis, and have made some contributions here and there, but definitely try to stay abreast of what's going on at the university. So thank you for this opportunity. I've just recently published a book, which I believe is one of the reasons why I was invited, but I'm going to do a little PowerPoint presentation and give you sort of an oversight of the background in terms of the years that I was at UConn, what was going on, a little bit about my music career, and then talk about the book and why it came about, and sharing with you some of the reviews and written comments I received back from people who've had a chance to read the book, and using that as a stepping off point to talking about certain key elements that the book basically presents. So I'm going to share my screen now. I hope everyone can see it okay. So let me just talk about the years that I was in stores. Arrived in 1967 as a freshman, was a student who I believe entered at that time a brand new summer program, particularly for what was then referred to as minority students on campus. We spent a couple of weeks in advance. The great part about that was I got to join the marching band early, as well as didn't wear a beanie on campus. You used to have beanies when you arrived on campus back then. I already knew the campus well enough and decided to shed mine. Was involved with the Board of Governors in 1970, played in the marching band, the pep band, the student orchestra, pretty much any musical organization that was there that required a trumpet, which is what I played at the time. I was involved in. Completed my undergraduate degree in 1972. I had to spend one additional semester there to graduate. It's probably my best semester. I only had like 2 classes, of which one was phys ed class, which was my horseback riding class. It was a lot of fun being on campus for that additional semester. Because my dream at the time was to play and perform and be like a Quincy Jones, I decided to head west, drove out there and turned around and came back pretty quickly. But it was one of the things that I wanted to do. So I didn't stay in California and came back and decided to re-enroll at UConn and enter the graduate program. That's when I started working in student activities, and particularly the student union, and ended up being the night manager for student union my last year working there, and planned all the summer activities. It was that experience of being at UConn that basically made me aware of my interest, which is to work with college students. I really loved being on a campus and really wanted to continue, but trying to find the right position to head for, I decided to work in college admissions as a way to kind of figure out where to go from there, whether it's going to be teaching or whether it's going to be administration. So I left in 1974 and started my first admissions job at Connecticut College. I also wanted to paint a picture as to what was really going on at that time. We were dealing with Vietnam War. I can remember sitting down watching on television when they were doing the draft, the first lottery draft for soldiers and people to join the armed forces. Believe it or not, my birthday was picked, the 8th number picked, but I was not drafted because I had severe allergies at the time. And so that was what got me out actually from going into the armed forces. We also were dealing with civil rights on campus, particularly Black Panther Party was very active in New Haven. And I think when you look at the yearbook pictures, you will find that there were a lot of demonstrations on campus. I can remember, I can say this now, taking over administration building. Also, I think in 1973, if I remember correctly, Glenn, that we had taken over the library as Black students. But civil rights was clearly one of the big issues, sort of the tail end of it to some degree. but still fighting for rights of not only people of color, but also for women and for gay and lesbian communities. It was also a time when we were proud to be an American, where we were landing on the moon. The ABA basketball was founded, which is now merged with the NBA. But Dr. J used to come down here and slam on our players at the UConn court because he was at UMass. I was involved with the ABA. And I also remember Disney World was not built yet. It was just being built, just to put that in perspective. So it was a great time to be on campus, a great time to be a student. It was very activist-like, and it provided me with tremendous opportunity to get engaged and do a lot of things. Even though it's a big campus with a lot of students, being a part of the music department gave me tremendous opportunities to write music, to be involved. So let me share a little bit about the music that I was involved with. Here's a picture of me coming out of high school, playing trumpet. Trumpet was my main instrument at the time. And I believe the music department knew that I was coming because they instantly put me into the lineup in the marching band. And I can remember actually with this unusual situation of being able to do an improvised jazz solo with the marching band out on the field. That was pretty unique. But trumpet was my instrument. And so that's what I played as the primary thing. And then you take piano as sort of your secondary instrument. Piano eventually became my instrument playing in a jazz group. That came about because I couldn't find a piano player at the time. And so with what little talent I had on piano, I switched over to keyboards, keeping trumpet as my primary instrument, but played keyboard instruments in the bands that I had. And I had several different groups at the time. This picture, I believe, might have been taken in the student union upstairs on that top floor, probably the old student union at the time. Here's a picture of me. As I mentioned, there's tremendous opportunity to get involved. And I had this wonderful opportunity to write or really arrange and a piece that was a piano piece and make it an orchestration for full orchestra. But not only to write it, but to conduct the piece during one of our concerts. I'm not sure if I was the first student to conduct, but I was definitely the first Black student, I think, to conduct the orchestra. And I felt very honored to have that opportunity. And I had wonderful teachers there who were really supportive. This is one of the bands that I had. This was a group that I had that was sort of post-college called Quintessence. And this is the copy of the album that we recorded and released in 1981. What I can tell you is that 3 of the members, 2 others besides myself, are also University of Connecticut graduates. The young gentleman sitting there with the shades on, Winston Johnson, who completed his degree around the same time, became a major social worker in the Hartford Public School system. And Dave Gaedeke, who's sitting there with the beard on in front of me, graduated after me, but came from New Britain, Connecticut, was a music major, and ended up teaching in the school system in Connecticut. So 3 of the band members at that time were all from the University of Connecticut. The album didn't do as well as we had hoped, but I can tell you now it's considered a collector's item, not because it's the best album you've ever heard, but because there are so few in print, and it's a rare, but it does get good reviews, and people do like it when they hear it. So there's very few copies, so now it's being sold as a collector's item, and I can tell you later where to find that if you want. As I mentioned, I've had a very professional life, and it mostly started in higher education, where I had worked 18 years, mostly doing college admissions work. Connecticut College, Colgate, and UMass Boston. Started in Conn College as an assistant director, Colgate as an associate dean. And then when I got to UMass Boston, I was hired initially as the associate director. Within a few months, became the director of the admissions office and stayed there for 10 years. At that point, I was 31 years old, a director of a large university, urban university admissions office. It's quite an honor. I can tell you that of all the 4-year institutions in New England, I was the only person of color as a director at that time. But while I was there at UMass, I wanted to complete my degree. I didn't want to waste that opportunity and went back to school and ended up getting a major in public affairs. I wanted something that was flexible so I could decide what to do later, whether wanted to stay in education or do something different. I knew I didn't want it for politics, however. But what I ended up doing was starting my own consulting business. I had quite a reputation around the country, and so I started the business working with higher education institutions and eventually gravitating towards working with nonprofit organizations. So two of the organizations were my own. I was the head of the organization. I was the owner, and then eventually joined an organization called Third Sector New England and spent a total of 11 years doing consulting work. We were very well-known in Boston and the New England area, working with all types of institutions, doing strategic planning, fundraising, program evaluation, just a number of different services that we provided. But it gave me a good perspective on the importance of the nonprofit sector and what it brings to helping other people. And I was always about trying to help other people. Now, how do you get to this type of work from music? Music is a very structured form of art in some respects, but it also, because of my jazz influence, also knew how to improvise, and you need to know how to do that when you work in the nonprofit sector. You need to be structured, and you also need to find a way to always come up with innovative ideas and things that you can bring to the work that you do in the community. So it was really relevant, and somehow I found my way there as well. It was at this point that I began to understand the importance of religion and God in my life, because every job that I had, and even the ones I had after, were jobs that were presented to me in a way that said, we want you to come here to work, or we would like you to apply for this job. I was always being sought after rather than having to apply for jobs where I was really hoping and crossing my fingers to get them. So I was, again, very, very fortunate, and I thank God for putting those things in my path. And particularly with the job of Associated Grant Makers, I was really happy doing consulting work, and found out that they wanted me to come be their president. And I was not really planning to leave. And it took them 4 interviews with me to convince me that it was the job that I was supposed to take next. I was there for 8 years, got the bug in philanthropy, and wanted to head up a foundation. So I went to work for the Community Foundation of Western Mass. That was probably the only job that I had taken where it was not a good fit. So I only stayed there for 3 years, worked out in Springfield. There were some good things that happened while I was there, met some great people, and got fully engaged in the community out there, but it was just not the right fit for me at that time. So I went back to live in Boston, and found a job working with Nurtury, which was the Learning Lab, which was an early education center. As you can recall, I worked only in higher ed at that point, but this was a different kind of a job because it was really about helping them raise money to build a new $17 million building. It was about working with the community residents who lived in this public housing area and making sure they understood the importance of early education. So a lot of my work was not about the early education, it was really about other things in the community. So I helped get that program off the ground, and that led to a job to teach at the Boston College School of Social Work. There I taught the things that I was doing in my consulting work, strategic planning, program evaluation, and fundraising. And that's the connection that I had, because I was not a licensed social worker, but I was able to teach our students who are macro, which is really the social work students who are mostly interested in administrative positions within the social work field. And that's who I was teaching in my classes, and spent 3 years doing that before fully retiring and moving to North Carolina. So the book, how it all came about. I started journaling right after I left the hospital. My 3rd visit in the hospital where I was dealing with some severe respiratory issues. And at this third visit is when they sent me home and said, you need to use oxygen. So I decided to keep a journal as a method for documenting my health. And it was also an opportunity for me to sort of reflect on life. At that point, I had not been writing anything, never really thought I would write a book, but I knew that keeping a journal would be really good therapeutically for me to really understand what was going on. And it was good for me to think in a very positive way about what was going on in my life. And the reflection is to really look back and to say, I've had a great life. And I wanted to sort of document that. But I also wanted to think about the things that were currently going on in my life. And it gave me a chance to sort of write those things down and be able to share that with someone. So after 2 years of keeping a journal, 77 entries, writing a lot and repeatedly editing this document, I decided I was going to write a book, and this is the result of it. The book is called Keep On Moving, and I'll get to the importance of the title later on, but worked with a publishing company to get it out. And so since September, I've been marketing and selling the book. If you're looking for more information about that, you can see our website, www.ancrumstrategic.com. And if you go to my website, you'll see how to read more information about the book and some of the reviews. So why print a book? I could have just kept a journal and shared it with just a few people, but I wanted to share it with more than just my family. I also wanted some friends to know about it and also be able to share my personal story with other people. But it was not really conclusive that I would do a book. And the question was, for whom and for what reasons would a book be the best thing to do? It's something I had to rethink a lot about. And finally came to the conclusion that it was what I wanted to do. As I mentioned, the book is being reflective about the past, discussing the present, and it gave me a chance to think about my future, to think about what I needed to accomplish during the rest of my life. What are the things that are most important to do? And so it helped me create that list of things to work on, accomplish. I had this theory that if I did one good thing and one important thing every day, at the end of the year, I would have done 365 things. So I didn't need to really load up my calendar with a lot of stuff. I just needed to make sure that my calendar had at least one major activity for the day. I wanted the book to make a statement about managing your life. When you're dealing with the issues that I have health-wise, it's about how you manage it that allows for you to continue living and continue to enjoy what you're doing. So this is about managing your life through challenges. And in which case I share some wisdom, not only about health, but on a number of other topics. So I'm going to share some of the reviews and using these, as I said, stepping off points to talking about some of the content in the book. You can read this for yourself. I won't read the statement here, but I'm going to pull out from this the end of it, which is the fourth quarter of life. The original title was going to be the fourth quarter. That's what I focused on when I was writing the book and thinking about that. And how I define that is we go through life working through 4 quarters. The earlier stage is what I call the developmental stage, between 0, when you're born, to probably in your early 20s. And then you go through from the 20s to your 40s, which is probably your most productive time of the year. You probably get married during this time. You're probably climbing that ladder successfully and establishing your career. You probably have more energy at this point in your life. This is probably the most important quarter and probably the most productive, as I said, quarter in your life. The third is when you're kind of settling down. You get you have established the way you like to do things, and you don't want to change too much. You're coasting. You've reached the pinnacle of your career, and probably only thing that's remaining is how active are you going to stay and what are you going to do? And if you're fortunate enough and you have children, you're raising kids during this stage of the game. The fourth quarter, therefore, is that period that is mostly closely aligned with when you're retiring. So for me, the fourth quarter started probably at age 60, but really I didn't retire until about 68. So it's an important part of your life. Clearly, a lot of us at this age, if some of the people in the audience can resonate with this, you begin to have health issues. You begin to start seeing friends and definitely family members passing away. You begin to decide whether to continue working or go into retirement. There are a lot of decisions that you have to make at this point that really are to sort of, how am I going to live out the rest of my life and continue to do things? So the book was really about the fourth quarter. It's the person who wrote this said insightful, compelling, sad, because as I said, you're dealing with a lot of health issues at this stage of the game. But it doesn't have to be sad at all. It could be actually a very vibrant time, depending on what you do with it. And in which case, planning to live in the fourth quarter and planning what you do in the fourth quarter becomes important. I thought I was going to be teaching still, but decided not to continue teaching. But I do give some of my time to volunteering with other nonprofits here and helping them with their issues. I've also been joining a number of social groups, particularly other groups with other Black men. And so I stay very active on a regular basis. This quote was coming from my friend Arthur, who he and I worked together in higher education realms. He worked for the College Board at one point. You can read this second review. And this one, not only about me being a Black man writing this book, but sharing of feelings. And one of the things I've learned and talked a lot with other Black men about is the fact that we are reluctant to share our feelings, to be very open, to be transparent. Instead, we try to hide all those feelings inside. When you approach someone that you know and say, hey, how you doing for the day? And I usually say, I'm doing great, I'm doing fine, I'm doing okay. But deep down inside, I know that I'm wrestling with these health issues. Or this morning, I didn't wake up and didn't really feel as energized as I would like. But I don't tend to say that to people. I've started doing more of that, letting people know how I really feel. And if I'm tired, I try to say, I'm okay, but I'm really tired today. And maybe that's the kind of conversation that we can have, is about what makes you tired? Why are you tired? How can you not be tired? I've just talked with a gentleman the other day who mentioned how important it is to talk about your health. And one of the things I learned when I was dealing with prostate cancer in 2008 was that a lot of Black men don't talk about it. They really try to hide that because of whatever stigma comes along with it. But because I did talk with other people, because I was very open that I was dealing with it, it gave me a chance to talk to other people, other men, particularly Black men who had gone through it and were survivors. And understanding that is really encouraging, that you actually can get on the other side of prostate cancer, which I am now. And so it's real important to have that conversation. When I find an opportunity to talk about health with other Black men, I relish that opportunity and try to be as open about my own issues, as well as giving advice and encouraging them to regularly see the doctors and address those things. So those are some of the lessons and insights that I brought to this book, because I've been going through some of these things myself. Black men tend not to share. And if you know, if anyone's in this audience that's a Black man, just think about how you can become more open with your feelings, particularly with those you're closest with, not just your family, not especially your children, but also talking with your closest friends. And it might be someone that you're mentoring that you can actually talk about these things with. And this comment about being open as a Black man was written to me from this sister in Boston. The third review, again, you can read this where I talk about my pulmonary arterial hypertension, which is what I have, and living with it during the fourth quarter. But this one I pulled out because it's about faith and positivity. One of the chapters in the book is about faith in God. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that you learned along the way is that God has already predetermined your pathway, and you're just playing the role. And that's how I feel really strongly about that. So when you learn to have faith in God, everything appears differently to you, and you can be much more positive about stuff that's going on in the world and around you. It's not that he takes care of every problem that exists, but you know that there's a long sort of an avenue for making sure that you're going to be saved and that you're going to be all right, and that you'll do the best you can. I knew that I have a disease that's not curable, but I also knew that this was an opportunity for me to thank God for giving me the strength to manage it well, and to make sure that I'm seeing the doctors and that the doctors are giving me the best treatment that can be given in my condition. So faith and positivity is clearly one of the things I write about in the book. You'll see a Bible verse quoted, you'll see a hymnal, a hymn quoted in the book. All of these are important indicators of my faith in God, and as well as how important it is to take care of these things in your life, and to be open, to spiritually be open to things that are going on in the world. This came from a close friend of mine who was one of the people that I used to sit next to in the pews at church. This next one is about the title, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the title. As I mentioned, the original title was going to be The Fourth Quarter. So now the subtitle was my journey in the fourth quarter. We decided to switch the title to Keep On Moving. And I actually decided that after reading this review. I was one of the people I sent the book out to before we sent it to the publisher. And this is what he wrote. Forever cherish the phrase, keep on moving. Where that came from was from my mentor, Hubie Jones. Hubie basically is a little older than I am, at least significantly older. But I was walking with him one day after his 80th birthday. And I said, Hubie, how do you keep going? How do you have this energy to stay active in the community, to do all the things that you do? And his answer was, you got to just keep on moving. You just keep active. You got to keep doing the things that you want to do and not let all the other things in terms of how you feel and things around you to kind of make you depressed and just kind of sit around doing nothing. So I use this phrase throughout the book, and a lot of the book is about staying active and what kind of activities I've engaged in. When people read the book, I hear now from a few people who've read it actually, who've been quoting this phrase and using it whenever they see appropriate, that it's important to keep on moving. Probably should get some t-shirts made like this, or coffee mugs that I could pass out that might help to market my book as well. But this is an important aspect of the book. Sitting down, becoming depressed about what my life is now because of health issues would not be the answer to where I need to be at this moment. And therefore I've adopted this theory and this principle of keeping on moving. And I hope if you read the book that you also find inspired by this and will think about what you're doing with your life. And then the last one I want to share with you really talks about the importance of doing a journal. This actually quote came from my mentor, and he was actually advising a number of other Black males and asking them to keep a journal. And now he basically says, this confirms that importance of doing this. Writing a journal is something that no matter what you're doing in life, you should do. I wish I had started it earlier. I wish I was documenting my thoughts, what was going on, what I was dealing with, how I've resolved some issues. There's a lot of lessons that come out of the journal. And whether you decide to write a book or not is not the important aspect of this. It's really about writing a journal for yourself. That's where it starts. It was my way of keeping track. And I was able to go back and read what I had written down and why that was important at that time. I found common themes of stuff that I was writing over and over again when I was doing this. Clearly, a lot of things that were on my mind were about my health, and I was clearly documenting that thoroughly. Every doctor's appointment, every twist and turn of things that were going on. But for you, it might be something different. And if you have the inclination to do this, I would start keeping a journal, not a diary where you have to do it every day, but a journal. Maybe you do it once a week. Find that time of the day. And for me, it was usually first thing in the morning when after sleeping at night and thinking about stuff, I'd wake up and have all these thoughts that I just wanted to get down on paper. And just let whatever happens, happens. It doesn't have to be a theme. It doesn't have to be on a topic. It just needs to be whatever at that moment you're thinking about and writing it down. A journal is a good therapeutic practice. And it's also a way that you can go back later and look at your life and understand what your life was like. And maybe it will turn into a book like mine. Maybe you'd end up writing a memoir, but if you hadn't taken the time to write it down, you won't remember everything that's going on. I'm going to leave you with just this one last statement called, when a person comes to mind, that's a sign to reach out to them by phone, email, text message, or letter. There's a reason why they've entered your mind. This is from the book. I wrote it there. Actually, this is my little sketch of a signpost. We printed it just like this in the book on one page. If you're sitting down, laying down, whatever it is, and someone comes to mind that you haven't seen in a while, try to reach out to them. There's clearly a reason why they're on your mind. Even if it's been 10 years, 15 years later, there's a reason that you should do this. I've practiced this since I wrote the book, and clearly it works. I reached out to someone and just learned that their spouse had passed away. I reached out to someone and they just found out that a family member has passed away. I reached out to them and they were changing jobs and they might be actually moving to North Carolina. And so we exchanged that. Or I might be traveling in their neck of the woods and I can get together with them. There's a group of us who had just gotten together in Washington, DC for this reason, that for years we had not talked with each other. But by reaching out, found out that one of them was moving to DC or another one had just moved to DC, and I was taking a trip in that direction. So we all got together, and we would not have done that if I had not reached out initially. So take the time to reach out and talk to people that you haven't talked to in a while, particularly if they come to mind and you're thinking about them. So those are all my comments, and I hope we have some questions. If you need more information about me, go to ron@ancrumstrategic.com, and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions. And I'm going to stop the share and go back to you, Glenn.
Ron, thank you very much for a very stimulating discussion about your book. We do probably have some questions, but I have a couple of questions to ask you about the book. I really feel it was an inspiration in that you're exposing some joys and some very candid challenges in your life. And one I like to kind of discuss, because you talk about it early in the book, is that your parents were divorced when you were basically an adolescent, you lived with your grandparents. You mentioned that your father was abusive, he drank too much and was incarcerated for a period of time in your life. But you talk about a relationship you developed with your Uncle Donnie. Can you tell us what that relationship was like and how that affected you as you?
Sure, sure, I'd be glad to. I'm glad you asked that question, especially my Uncle Donnie was my father's brother, about 13 years older than me. So to some respects, he was a big brother, but he was my uncle. But he was also like a surrogate father to me as well. He was the one that, when I was getting my driver's license, got a car for me to drive. Now there came a task along with that, which was when my grandmother needed to go to the grocery store, I was to take her. But he was the one that got me the car, not my father. My father was living, he was around, but it was my uncle who was the one that came through. He was the person who took care of his parents when they got elderly. He was the one that took care of my father when he got sick. He's the one that took care of his sister when she was ill. And when he became ill, then he was the person that I most wanted to make sure I did everything I could to take care of him. My Uncle Donnie was special. He was loved by everyone. He would make friends with the people at the nearby restaurant. And when you walked in there with him, they all knew his name walking in, and he would know their names. And it could be a place that he just, goes in a few times, but he's just that outgoing, friendly guy. He had a great smile. He was a special person. He loved to hunt, loved to golf, played softball. He was very active, and I loved him dearly. So thank you for asking about him. He was special.
Great. I think there's some 3 chapters in the book to talk about the sidelines.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain that? I thought it was fascinating when you kind of looked at life, in the sports analogy, but as a sideline. But tell us what goes on in the sidelines of life.
Yeah. So I didn't say this earlier, but for those who have not seen the book, I use a lot of sports analogies throughout. As I mentioned, the book was to be called The Fourth Quarter, and I took that literally and applying it to the sports to the book. So the fourth quarter, as you know, is when it's much more intense and you're getting down to the end. So to follow that sort of theme of sports analogies, I used chapters where I did not talk about my health or about myself, but talked about things related to it. So it was all the stuff that went on that was about the community, about my ancestry work, research, all the things that I wanted to try to understand. So a lot of times in sports, on the sideline is when all those huddles get made and decisions get made about whether you're going to substitute something or do something. So for me, that was about planning and organizing myself to do what it was that I was going to do. I was maybe changing my strategy around a little bit. So that's what I used for sidelines. It was to pick up on other stuff that was not directly about my health and to interject, like, these are important as well. And I wanted to share those stories with other people.
Well, thank you. We have some people who have some questions, but before those questions are brought up, I have one to ask you. Since we're talking about a sports analogy, and I'll kind of turn it to football and use this analogy. In the fourth quarter, let's say of life, how should you manage the 2-minute drill?
Manage the what?
In the fourth quarter, let's say you're in the fourth quarter, how should we manage that 2-minute drill? Because in the football, we get down to 2-minute drill, things get kind of, helter-skelter, it's a win or it's a loss. How do you manage and again, sticking with the analogy, how do you manage that 2-minute drill? And I understand we don't know exactly.
Yeah. A 2-minute drill sounds like I'm in the hospital and I have to make some serious decisions at that point of to win or lose, or to stay alive or not stay alive. I've not confronted that yet. But I do know from talking to my friends that we all hope for an overtime, which means an extended life going forward. But I think if you were managing it, the best thing you could do is what I do write about in the book. And it goes back to planning. We have taken the time to try to put all of our fears in order so that should that unexpected moment come, this is not just in that 2-minute drill, but something unexpectedly happens, that everything is in place and left behind. So I've actually written my obit. I have written a letter basically saying, here's my last wishes that I want. We have actually purchased a plot. We have tried to do everything to just make it easy for family after to basically take care of everything, and I can have it go the way that I want it to go. And so planning is important to understand that should you face that you organize everything that you would have to think about while you can think about it when you're not under pressure. And therefore you're actually prepared for that 2-minute drill.
What I thought about that 2-minute drill was that, I hope that 2-minute drill, I hope to come out victorious. And with the victory, there's a celebration.
Yes, there is.
So, we oftentimes don't celebrate life when people are living. We kind of celebrate it afterwards. So I'm going to make sure that people celebrate afterwards that things go.
Yeah.
I guess we have a question. April, do you want to bring up one of the questions that are in our chat box?
Yes, we do have a few questions that have been coming in, but first, Ron, let me thank you for sharing your experiences with us this evening. But the topic of life experiences, we have a question on that you have covered some very progressive and at time turbulent periods in the history of this nation. Based on where you are now, how would you gauge the progress of people of color in the quest for equality in education, medicine, politics, and economics?
Okay. Make sure I covered those 4 areas if I missed 1 or 2 of them. Wow, that's an important question. Things are better, not done, not completed. I think there's been some progress made in many respects, but the job is not done, and some of the gains, there are people out there trying to tear those walls down today. Thank goodness for the young people who are very active with Black Lives Matter and the work that they've done. I think when you go back to the civil rights, there was also a group of young people, SNCC, who were very involved. You need that young energy, that inspiration from these young people and trying to make this a better world. So thank goodness to Black Lives Matter. The battles we're fighting now are probably more challenging because of the way that we're divided politically speaking. I mean, I think there was always some division, but not as extensive and as detrimental as it is today. It's hard to believe what things are going on in this world and in this country in particular with regards to that. I'm tired of seeing Black men killed, regardless of whose hand it's at, whether it's cops or whether it's just random, whether it's another Black man on Black crime. I'm just tired of crime, period. We're a much better society than that. And yet it still seems to be rampant. More people I think are poor. And I think in a capitalist society, that tends to happen where a bunch of people getting richer and a large number of people are getting poorer as we go through. The middle class is shrinking. So there's a lot of issues out there. So as I said, I think there's been gains. There are doctors in the world. I've had success in finding great Black doctors down here in Charlotte that did not exist up in Boston. So a lot may depend on where you live. I think we've had plenty of opportunities for people of color to take on leadership roles in education. And I think that that's been good. And then what was some of the other fields? Was it legal or business?
Politics and economics.
Politics. Well, economics, I mean, clearly there are a lot more, I think, Black CEOs today than I've ever seen before. People are getting up to that level. And people are getting elected, particularly Black women across this country are getting elected. So while there are gains, there's still a lot of energy that's trying to tear it all down.
Thank you. I just want to mention to you, I'm not sure if you noticed it, that William Trueheart is with us this evening.
Oh,
and I know you specifically mentioned him earlier in our conversation.
Yes. Well, please, Bill, let me know how to reach you. Please get in touch.
Yes, Bill, I will give you my email address in chat and you can then contact me directly and I can get you back in touch with each other. But as we're winding up to 7 o'clock, I do want to get in a couple of more questions. Ron, how important is music to you at this time in your life?
Thank you for asking that. And I've not been performing in music at all, probably since the late 80s. So I'm a big listener of jazz. I still go out to hear music all the time. I've said to myself that when I get to retirement, I'm going to write at least one more song. I feel I have something in me to do that. And it's still on my list of things to do. So I'm a big supporter of jazz. I support an organization here called Jazz Arts. We go out there regularly to hear their music. They're a nonprofit organization. I started a group called Charlotte Jazz Buzz. We run it like a book club. And so one of the members will decide on the topic. We listen to the music in advance, and then we get together like a book club and talk about the music and the culture and the history that surrounds it. We've been going on for 3 years now that we've been doing this, and it's been a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And someone asked if you have a personal board of directors, and if so, do you recommend we all identify one?
Do I have myself, my organization?
I think I'm not quite sure.
I do not have a board of directors. The Ancrum Strategic is a for-profit entity, but I do work with nonprofits. Currently, I'm not serving on any boards. I decided in retirement that would be one of the things I do not do. So instead, with a couple of organizations who have asked me to get involved and wanted me on their boards, I actually donate time to them, and really it's like a executive coaching kind of support to their director rather than being on the board.
And we'll get in just one more here. Do you have any regrets, particularly about the road or the roads not traveled?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of those roads, I think you'll find this interesting, Glenn. One of those avenues that I didn't travel that I wish I had was in arts administration. When I was working in the student union, I was asked to apply for this fellowship in Connecticut and Hartford. I think it might have been the program that you were in, Glenn, and I did not get in, but they called later and invited me to join, and I decided not to go that route. I always wonder what it would have been like if I had done that. I wonder what it would have been like if I had stayed in higher ed and never left. Would I be a professor somewhere? There's a lot of roads I did not travel, but as I said, my path was already predetermined. And so I think my changing and doing the things that I did were a result of God's will.
That's great. You made the right decision, Ron. No, you definitely made the right decision. I was going to ask you, and maybe you can think about this at another time, but I was going to ask you, what do you think was the most important chapter? If the person you knew, you wanted to give them wisdom and guidance, everything, what chapter in the book do you think would be the most important one for them to read?
Oh, the most important chapter.
On the average Joe.
Yeah. They're all important. I can't just pick one out. I mean, it's a storyline that goes from one thing to the next. And so what's the most important? Read them all and get to the last chapter, because that's probably the most important. Getting to the end of the book and understanding where I see myself today after all that I've gone through. That's probably the most important chapter.
Good. Well, I think that we're getting close to our ending here. Ron, it's been a pleasure. It's been a great pleasure having you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Getting to your wisdom and talking about the years at UConn and kind of reunion with a lot of folks. I mean, Bill Trueheart's here, and that's great. I know Jim Lyons is here also.
Yeah, great.
Some of the folks from back when, Winston, I believe, is sitting here. So all the folks that you kind of knew about, and some probably new people that have joined us. And we hope that this has been an enlightening experience for everyone, and that we continue to do this for the Alumni Association, African American Alumni Association in UConn. We'll have some more things coming up as we go forward. Just hope that you continue to participate. And also give us ideas of things you'd like to hear from us, things you'd like to, or people you are interested in talking to or listening to. It's been a great experience. And Ron, thank you very much for spending time with us this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.